Please welcome Aaron and Peter.
How are we? Good. My name's Aaron Birkby. I spent most of my life as a tech entrepreneur. And in the last 7 years, I've been very lucky to work with thousands of entrepreneurs, investors, and others, mostly in the startup space, so high-growth technology companies, taking them into markets like Israel, Silicon Valley, London, and Berlin. And along with Peter, I'm the co-founder of Peak Persona, which is around individual high performance, and now Tribe Global, which is around building high-performing teams.
And I'm Peta Ellis. I'm a co-founder of Tribe Global, obviously, and Peak Persona. I have previously had multiple ventures myself. None have been outstandingly successful. Obviously, I spent the last 7 years as CEO of River City Labs, which is a innovation hub here in Brisbane, and have come across so many different versions of entrepreneur and startup founder. And actually this week, we've got a contract with QUT at the moment, and we've been under the hot, sweaty tents of O Week under the QUT Entrepreneurship banner. And what I did learn is that nobody knows what the word means. So that's the number one barrier to identifying with entrepreneurship, and also not even wanting to identify with the word. There are so many amazing people out there doing amazing things, but they hate the word and they don't want to own it because it means that they are now officially in business, and they have a set level of expectations on the back of that. So tonight we're going to talk to you about everyday entrepreneurship, what that actually means, and obviously being seekers in business or business owners, you're always looking for the next thing. What's next? What are the next trends? We have worked with that many founders and entrepreneurs, and everybody has the same question. The thing is, there is no magical answer, there is no set formula, there is no blueprint to entrepreneurship, because you actually have all of the answers within you, which nobody likes that answer. They say, well, what is it, Peter? Where are the trends? Where should we be looking? What's coming next? And like the previous speakers both set the perfect prelude to this talk and what we're going to be talking about tonight, we've got a few issues in terms of what's next. We've got a generational issue in terms of the younger generations coming through not being naturally good at problem solving, just because we've been born into a world where lots of things come easy to us. Then we've got the outgoing generation of baby boomers, which we've coined the term modern elders, because we need their IP, we need their experience, but we need the two worlds to come together. Yet, all of us were just a little bit soft.
So we've all heard that there's so much opportunity that we can actually be a bit spoiled. We don't choose hard. Do any of you know who this is? Just show of hands if you know who this is. David Goggins, an absolute nutcase by many respects, dubbed the toughest man in the world. He basically successfully entered the 4 hardest military services, including twice going through the Navy SEALs Hell Week. The Navy SEALs have this thing called the 40% rule, which is at the point where you give up, you literally have pushed yourself to the extreme of what you think is humanly possible. You've actually only given 40% of what you could do. You've left 60% in the tank. And the thing is, all of us are actually leaving unrealised potential on the table every single day. If we're not in our peak state, how can we perform at a peak state? But also with our teams and our businesses. And that can be hard to hear, but we're going to share some techniques of how you can change this paradigm. Have any of you heard of the baby elephant syndrome? It's pretty sad. But when a baby elephant is born in captivity or caught, captured, they actually chain it to a tree or a pole. And that baby elephant will pull and pull and pull and pull on that chain until it gives up. It knows, I cannot release myself from this chain. The problem is that elephant then grows up to be a large elephant. And they use the same chain, actually with a smaller stake in the ground, to hold that elephant captive, because it's learnt not to bother pulling on the chain. It's held captive by a belief. Now have a look at this picture. 6 large elephants held by a chain that, if you can't make it out, that's a small piece of wood that's holding those chains. If just one elephant bothered to move its foot, it could break free. But none of them even try, because they're held captive by their belief. We work with thousands of entrepreneurs, and what holds them back isn't a lack of knowledge, it isn't a lack of skill, it isn't a lack of awareness, it isn't answering the question of what's next. It's actually all entirely up here, our own beliefs. Now, you've heard about an elephant. What about a cow? And you're probably a bit surprised we're talking about cows and elephants at an entrepreneurship event. But I actually owned some beef cattle. I registered them on my dad's farm, and I was amazed that these creatures that weighed over a ton could be held captive by tiny bits of wire and tiny fences held together with a little bit of wire. Until one day, we bought this bull, Winston, after Winston Churchill. And when all the grass was eaten in the paddock, we found suddenly the gate was open. And it took us a while to work out that Winston would go up to the gate, literally bash his head on it until the gate was off its hinges, wait there by the gate for all the other cattle to leave the paddock. In a lot of ways, that's very entrepreneurial. Saw an opportunity, an unrealised potential. There was a greener paddock that all the cows should move to. And Winston kept doing this, broke every gate. If it stopped there, that's a great story. But what happened is we eventually sold Winston. And the beauty of it was the other bulls in the paddock, just by observation, had learnt that they could go and bash their head on the gate and knock it off its hinges. And this is the thing. The herd we surround ourselves with actually determines our paradigm of what we can achieve. When Roger Bannister beat the 4-minute mile in 1954, no one had done it before him. Since then, 1,400 people have done it. So if you want a different result, if you want to realise the unrealised potential, you need to change your tribe.
In the entrepreneurship conversation, we keep coming back to it and the word and what people associate it with it. I told the exact same bull story today at Ipswich Girls Grammar, where I was teaching some students, and the way to explain what entrepreneurship was is to highlight that you need to just be a problem solver. You need to see the opportunity that no one else has seen yet. You just need to be the first one, or you possibly need to do something different. So it's a mindset. It's not actually a title or a thing. Entrepreneurship is a mindset, and it absolutely is for everybody if we would just take our blinkers off and to start being more curious and then follow through with action after that and being bold and brave and to take the next steps. But for this to happen, for all of us to embed this culture into our organisations, into our workplace, into our houses, into our schools, we need to change a few things. But we also need to change how we lead. So if you lead a group or lead a team, and I'm not talking about if you run a company, it could be in your own sporting community, it could be in your communities, it could be within the schools, so many different things. If you're leading a group of people, we need to lead differently. And the way that companies are structured need to be different. So modern leadership is definitely not about opening the gates, it's about becoming the coach. So leaders need to become coaches to unlock this style of thinking with their entire organisation. And I mean everybody, which is giving permission for everybody to become problem solvers, to think of things differently. But that comes back to what Aaron was saying in terms of unrealised potential. To be able to empower others to know what they could put on the table and not leave behind is you need to give them that permission slip. They need to be allowed to go with outside of the rules, the parameters of their job description or their role or the hierarchy within the organisation, and to have the freedom to be able to put ideas forward and think differently. And that is the way we need to structure our organisations, is to have less hierarchy and empower our people to become the problem solvers, and then work out what to do next and take them through the system.
So the analogy for those of you that are managing teams is, think of the shackles that you've put around the ankles of your baby elephants, your team, your staff, your people, your customers, your partners. What would it actually look like if we empowered them, if we coached them rather than bossed them? If we had teams that were more like herds that are accountable to each other rather than to a central boss? Then the young baby could grow into a teenager and ultimately become the modern elder, leading change. So how do we do this? We have 6 techniques, just a small number that we'll go through now, to how do you actually instill these habits, these changes inside your teams?
So we work with lots of different organisations, small organisations, large corporates. It's often the large corporates that have the most issue with embedding this change or starting small to shift the mindset, and it's really challenging for people within leadership roles to break down the hierarchy. One of the things we always encourage people to do is get to know their people better. And all of you think, well, we do know our people better. But do you really, really know your people? So we have something which we call a role and soul profile. So of course your role profile is what you actually do for a job. What is your job title? What does that entail? And what do you need to do that? Then we have your soul profile. I mean, who are you? What are you interested in? What drives you? What are your passions? What are all of your personality profiles? So we mentioned a few Myers-Briggs profiles there. We always do the DISC profile to make sure every person in the organisation knows exactly how to best communicate to each other. Because you'd be surprised at some organisations who are so top-heavy in some of these profiles and have big gaps in others. And they've often felt like things just are disjointed, but it's just because they need a shift or a better understanding of each other. But to understand each other truly involves a lot of discovery and a lot of conversation, and you need to get personal. We're moving into a world which you really, really need to know each other at a much, much deeper level to have effective communication and to influence change for all of the reasons that both of the previous speakers mentioned. That's really, really important to do.
One of the most innovative hotspots I've visited is Israel. Israel has a tiny population, 8 million people. It's war-torn, but they have 8,000 high-tech, high-growth companies, which puts them per capita at one of the most innovative populations on the planet. And there's been a lot of research done on Israel. What was a factor in their success? And they actually attribute it to mandatory military service. But why? It's because when you're forced into that military service, you operate beside people that you would not otherwise meet in your life. Completely different socio-demographics, completely different parts of the country, completely different social circles. Suddenly, everyone is connected and built a relationship to the point that everyone is 1 degree of connection away from someone else. So how do you replicate that inside your organisation? One simple technique is an unconference. Has anyone been to an unconference? Basically a conference which is completely unscheduled.
You run one.
People put post-it notes up. This is what I want to talk about. So we've done this for companies, and someone wants to rewrite the ending to some TV series. Someone else is really passionate about Irish pubs. What it does is it breaks down the hierarchy. Suddenly you have a commonality, you have a common shared language and passion, and it builds communication, it builds trust and space for vulnerable conversations.
Leaderless meetings means the boss isn't there, the meetings still happen, and most of you probably still already do that. But you need to look at how the team is interacting in those meetings, and it seems really simple. But are they all accountable to each other, opposed to accountable to the boss, or accountable to their manager, or accountable to whoever it is above them? Having that leaderless meeting means that everybody then has a direct relationship with the other members of the team. And it means that if they're not performing, or if they're late on something, or if they need to give feedback or ask a question, it means that their own performance could hold up someone else's performance. And all of a sudden, the dynamic changes within the team. It's an extremely powerful tool to just try. And it also means that you just have continuity at all times throughout, like each week, quick stand-up where everyone gives an update, whether the boss is there or not. And I know so many leaders are a bit hesitant to do this at first, but the fact that they can travel, and as we all do lots of things as leaders, to know that team accountability is still happening every single week is super, super powerful.
The hot wash. So on an aircraft carrier, when a military fighter jet comes in and lands, they immediately wash it while the airframe is hot. And the reason they do that is to get all the bugs off. They want that aircraft to perform at its highest possible standard. It's called a hot wash. The theory is, let's get all the shit off while it's hot, while it's fresh. You can apply this to a team meeting. Imagine ending every day where you have a hot wash. And any gripe with any other team member, any challenging thing, anywhere where something's being blocked, all those water cooler conversations that normally happen behind people's back, they now happen in the room. Because the truth is more real and honest when it's said to someone's face. So you have a hot wash. Whenever you capture someone having that water cooler conversation, can you believe Mary did this? You say you have to raise that at the hot wash. You significantly change the culture of your team performance and dynamic by putting everything into an honest conversation in a vulnerable space or a safe space.
And the post-action report. So John, after this meeting, after this event, would normally have with his team something called a post-action report. We would note down how the speakers went, what the crowd was like, it was too hot, whether there was drinks on time, whatever it was, you just do a post-action report immediately. So we do this all the time. Often we do lots of talks and we do a download after the event to talk about what went well, whether the slides worked, they didn't work, or whatever happened. They have to be on the spot. As you know, it's really relevant in the moment, and being busy, as we all are as business people, you move straight into the next thing. So unless you capture it on the spot, when everything's fresh, the details, the really, really important details, can easily get lost. So post-action reports should be something that you embed into the culture after every single event, every single talk, or whatever your core business operation is, to embed it into the culture to always do a post-action report.
One thing on our PAR today is we're 90 seconds over. The last one there is to reward behaviour, not outcomes. So Facebook does this. Facebook will have a project, they'll do a pre-mortem, they'll actually dissect what are all the ways that this project could fail before we even start, and how do we mitigate that. The project runs, and at the end they do a post-mortem. Now in most organisations you reward the outcome. You celebrate, yes, we got 3 million of sales, great, everyone gets their bonus. But how do you know the unrealised potential you've left on the table? So at Facebook, a project can complete successfully and staff still won't get their bonus unless they behaved in the most optimal way to unlock every potential opportunity. Did they conduct enough experiments? Were they failing at 70% of the experiments they ran, not because they suck at execution, but because they were pushing the paradigm of what was known so much that they exhausted every possible potential? So reward behaviour, not outcomes.
So basically, all of those tools is what we use and a lot of startups use and entrepreneurs use. And it's it's a cultural mindset shift. So when we talk about everyday entrepreneurship, it's a way of thinking. It's not going and being everyday entrepreneurs specifically in any one industry. It's a different way of thinking. It's a layer you put on everything that you do. And if you can embed the culture within your organisation by introducing a lot of these accountability and culture shifting behaviours, of which high growth companies do, then you do shift the change. You do create the change. And that you create things that people can actually change the way they operate within the organisation.
Thank you.